OtherworldlyCulture.com presents a conversation with iconic stuntman Tom Morga, moderated by Michael Exler and recorded at the Horror Realm 2025 convention in Pittsburgh.
It's working. It is. Well, thank you for taking some time to speak with us today. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I should have gone wardrobe and hair and makeup first, right?
So before you got into stunt work, I read you were a smoke jumper in Montana. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, that's kind of how I got started. I got started kind of late in stunt business, but I'd been in the military and I'd been to college. And while I was finishing college, I got a job working in Montana and fighting fires with the smoke jumpers. And how many know what a smoke jumper is? Ever hear them? Okay, well anyway, smoke jumpers typically go to fires in wilderness or out long areas that are far from roads sometimes, that start usually from lightning strikes, and they fly in an airplane, jump out with a parachute, get down, put the fire out before it gets big. And so it's kind of a neat job. I applied for it and I got it. So I was doing that, and there was a show, and this is back in the 70s, and there was this show called Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. And they were doing an episode about a forest fire, and they had a buffalo herd they were going to try to save from this forest fire. So they used smoke jumpers, and I was one of the guys. So we jumped out of the airplane, landed, took our stuff off, and went off to the fire. And it was kind of fun. So I came back. I'm from Southern California, and I went to Universal Studios where they do a stunt show and talked to the guys about it. Say, hey, I did this show, what's it take to be a stuntman? And they kind of put me off. But I came back the next year. I said, well, I'm still jumping out of airplanes and stuff. Maybe he says, okay, well, there's a place in Santa Monica that you could go to. The guy has a school. So I went there. And once I got started, it was great. I loved it, and I never turned my back on it. I had gotten a degree in biology at Humboldt College, and I never used it. That's my story.
So on IMDb, when I was looking at some of your roles, there's some terms that we're probably not familiar with. One is utility stunts. What is a utility stunt?
Well, when you have a bar fight, or you have general stuff being done, you have a bunch of stunt guys that are going to do a lot of common action, fights, falls, whatever it is. So you get some stunt guys. You call them in for it. Say, well, we're going to do some general stunts. You'll be just utility stunt guys, and that's why they use the name utility. Okay. Like a common laborer for a job.
Right. Okay.
So utility stunt guys are the guys who do a lot of background stuff and some things that they're not necessarily doubling the star, and they're not featured in a big stunt, but there's a lot of action going on.
Okay, so the second one is the stunt double. That's
when you double one of the actors and you take his place for the action.
And then stunt coordinator, would that be the boss?
Yeah, the department is stunt department. It's headed up by a stunt coordinator, and the coordinator is the one who is hired by the production company, and they give him the script. They figure out what they're doing and what it's about, and he'll break down the script to all the stunts. He'll figure out how they're going to be done, and then he'll call some guys he knows, because the stunt coordinator is somebody who's had a lot of experience. He's been in the business long enough that he can tell you who's a good high fall guy, who's a good car guy, who does good firework, whatever it is. And he'll call those people in to do his work on his show.
Very good. So let's stick with stunt double. You've been the stunt double for some amazing actors: Leonard Nimoy, Harold Ramis, Travolta, Tim Robbins. Does anyone stick out to you as one of your favorites?
It's hard to say. They're all different, but most of them are really good guys. I did Bruce Boxleitner for a series called Scarecrow Mrs. King. And that was really great. I liked Bruce. He was a good man. And then, just so many of them were really cool. You rarely find somebody that you don't get along with very well, especially when you're doing action, because everybody wants to do it good. They like to look good, and you want to make them look good.
Right. So for Harold Ramis, what were some of your responsibilities in Ghostbusters?
Well, we were doing the show that was one of the first ones they used computer graphics on, because they were going to do the ghosts and things that you'd see after in post. And we didn't know too much about what they were doing. And the stunt coordinator for that movie says, you guys, I'm not so sure this movie's going to make it. He says it seems to be kind of a dud. They don't tell us too much what's going on, and they got this computer thing you're going to do, so make sure you cash your checks. and so, okay, so we were, I was doubling for Harold Ramis, Spengler, and when the, what's her name, the one who says, "Are you God?" and essentially we all fell off the stairs, almost come off the building. And then we had another scene where the ground broke open and the car fell in and we all fell in. So a few of those kind of things what we did for the Ghostbusters. And at the time we had no idea it turned into what it was.
So when we think about stunts, we think of the explosions and the high falling and everything. Tell us about some of the things that we wouldn't necessarily as fans think are stunts and what you guys have to perform.
Well, it's hard to say there's something you wouldn't know, but you know, just driving, there's lots of different things. If a car doesn't blow up or turn over, you're still racing, and those are kind of things you don't know. Maybe riding horses or even scuba diving. There's a lot of other things that go into stunt work that may not look as fancy as others. You know, you can do some high work. They did work on the scaffolding on the Statue of Liberty with stunt guys for a movie they had done years ago and stuff like that. So that might make people think, well, those are the actors, but they put stunt people in dangerous places to replace the actors.
But you do simple falls too, right?
Oh yeah, I've done a lot of falls. Anybody seen the movie called The Stunt Man with Peter O'Toole? Well, if you didn't, you wouldn't know what I'm talking about. But no, I've done a lot of different high falls, yeah.
Is there any stunt that you just say, no, I'm not really comfortable?
Well, not necessarily. There's been a couple of stunts that I say, well, I can do that for you, but there's an expert, you know, some guy who's done like, I do bike work, but I'm not one of the best bike guys, so I had somebody ask me about doing some bike jumps or something. I said, well, I could do that, but I'll tell you who's the best guy. Mm-hmm. Something like that. You know?
So you're the only guy to play Jason, Leatherface, and Michael Myers.
So far.
So are you a horror fan? And what, if so, what does that mean to you to be able to play those iconic characters?
I was never a big horror fan. I liked some of the movies. Of course, when I was growing up, it was the old movies that we looked at. You know, that was before they did all of these Friday movies and Halloween. So it was Frankenstein and Werewolf and all those things that we looked at. And The Thing had come out and a few others. But I wasn't a big fan. I mean, I'm like everyone else. I wanted to go see some of these things, but I was never a really big fan. When this came out, I knew about Jason, but I hadn't watched him. I think I saw one, you know, but and I didn't really think that it was going to be a big deal because they'd already killed Jason enough that you know this was like a new beginning or something. And he wasn't even the real Jason. So I figured it would be kind of just, you know, a one and done. Had no idea it'd go on for years and years like this. But, you know, I'm just really lucky to have done what I did to be doing these characters. So I'm really a fan now if I wasn't before.
For sure. So you worked on the first Power with Lou Diamond Phillips.
Yeah, the first Power.
Yeah, do you remember working on that?
Oh, of course, yeah. With Lou.
It's one of my... Not a lot of people talk about it, but I love the film, so I just wanted to get... like.
Well, that's great. Not many people ask about it. How many people saw the first Power? Yeah, we did some good stuff. I know I did some things with Lou Diamond Phillips. We were in the church, and I did what we call an air ram. An air ram is a device that's like a trap door that works opposite. It throws you, and they got nitrogen bottles that have nitrogen pressure on them, and when you hit the plate on the top, it trips the valve and it pushes this thing out, and it can take you for a long ride. And we were doing this movie, and they wanted me to go over his head and out through a stained glass window. And so we practiced that out and got it figured out. And I did that. I thought it looked pretty good. If you recall, the priest who I was doubling, he was the arch bad guy. He was at that time dressed as a priest, and Lou Diamond Phillips is coming to the church looking for him, and he's at the altar, and he comes running and takes a jump, just leaps clear over him and out the stained glass window. That was kind of fun. And there was other things we did, a little driving and stuff like that. But I thought it was a good movie myself. I haven't heard a lot of comments about it, but I thought it was good. I like Lou.
Yeah.
He was a good guy. I saw him at a convention last year too, and he's, oh yeah, I remember. We had old times.
So let's move to Leatherface. You were Leatherface in the truck for TCM2.
Right. I helped with that scene that went over the bridge. And the story of that, the Leatherface character, of course, the stuntman who is, he had been doing the show before I got there, and he worked the entire show and did almost all the stuff you see. There was a little bit for the actor, of course, but most of this is done. And that particular day I came on the set, they were doing this bridge scene, and Bob Elmore, who was a stunt guy, he'd been doing this and his arm was hurting because he'd done something, and the chainsaw is a pretty heavy thing and you're doing all this work, so he had hurt his wrist or his arm. And I walked up, I'm on the set, I just get there, hey, how you doing? I said, hello, and the stunt coordinator's there with this bridge, say, hey, Tom, come here. He says, look at Bob's arms hurt. Would you jump into this thing and do this shot? We need to get another shot going across the bridge. I said, oh, okay, well, all right, what are we doing? And he says, well, you're going to get on this truck and you're going to stand on the edge of the bed of the truck. We're going to go backwards and you're going to carry the chainsaw and reach out and cut the convertible top on that Mercedes that's running forward. Okay. And the only way I think it's going to save you is the fact we're going to put a harness underneath your wardrobe and we're going to cable you from your back to the other side of the pickup truck so you won't fall off. Okay. I bet my feet could slip out from underneath me. Oh yeah, don't let that happen. So I did it, and this is the one shot or so that I was in, and I never thought a whole lot about it. I had to do the scene. I was actually hired to double for the radio station manager. He walks he's walking up the steps inside the radio station, and Leatherface breaks through the door, hits him with the chainsaw, knocks him over the rail. He hits the desk, falls over, and Chop Top hits him with a hammer and kills him. I don't know if you remember that scene, but that's what I was hired to do, and that's what I did. But I did this little thing for Leatherface, and never thought too much of it. And the word got out from somebody. He says, "Oh, well, you did Leatherface." Well, no, I didn't do Leatherface. Elmore did all the work. I stood in for him for one shot, but you did Leatherface. So you're the ones that gave me credit for it. I'm not going to take it, but if you want to give it to me, okay. But I did Friday the 13th, Part 5, and I was Jason through the whole film there, and I did half of the film of Halloween 4 that George P. Wilbur did the second half. So, I mean, this stuff happens all the time when you're making movies. It isn't just like straightforward all the time that every scene's done by the same guy or something. So I do take credit for, Michael and Jason, but I just did so little of Leatherface, but I did it.
So that's cool. I didn't know that you actually doubled the other guy as well. In Leatherface, TCM2.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool. So you did stunts for another guilty pleasure film of mine. That's Jaws: The Revenge.
Oh, yeah.
So the movie probably not the best, but did you go to another place that was a better location shoot?
No, we did that on the set.
Really?
They had a background, and this was on Warner Brothers, and they had a tank, and they had the ship there, the boat, and it was going to crash down, and the Jaws was coming up and capsizing it, and who that double was his name?
Michael Caine?
No.
The main...
No, it was the other fellow on the boat. His name escapes me for a minute. But anyway, I was on the ship there. In fact, I did a couple of Jaws. I did Jaws 2, and then I Jaws the other one too. So in Jaws 2, I was underwater and scuba stuff, and then on this one, the shark comes up and gets the boat and capsizes it. So I did do that. I've done a little bit of Jaws.
Done a little bit of almost everything going through.
I did a lot of Star Trek.
Yeah, you did. So Halloween 4, why did you guys split it up? Was it a schedule between you and Wilbur, or? No. It's like
I don't know the story myself, and when you're on a movie, it's a big production. I mean, there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of departments and they got producer people and they all have their own problems and things they're trying to make work for this movie. And if they have to make changes for something, somebody up, in production says, oh yeah, let's do this, let's do that, change something. Well, in my case, they weren't real happy with the director of photography. They didn't like exactly, I guess, something he was doing, so they changed him out, took some of his crew away, and at some place, somebody said, well, we should get a bigger Michael. And they said, well, okay, well, let's change the Michael. And so George Wilder showed up one day, and they said, hey, George's going to take the rest of the movie. I said, really? I didn't know that. And I talked to him about George. I said, well, okay, have a good one. He said, all right. But the fact was, I was wearing a little bit of shoulder pads because I'm one as big as George. But when he put the stuff on, I didn't think he looked any bigger than me. But it was some kind of decision that the production made. And I can't tell you what it was, but I left the show and George did the second half of it.
Oh, that's weird. It's weird.
I know.
Did you get to spend any time with Donald Pleasance on this set?
I didn't spend a lot of time, but I did do the gas station scene, which was kind of neat.
Oh.
And I thought he was really good. I mean, he was a real smellow guy, and he's real professional. And I think if you've ever heard Donald before, everybody has good things to say about him. He's a great guy. What I like doing is breaking through the garage door with the truck and crashing into the gas pumps, and everything goes up, and he dives. The stunt guy for him, of course, dives out of the way. But that was a neat scene.
Yeah, it was. You were in Army of Darkness.
Yeah. In your career, you do a lot of stuff that's just for a few days. You might have a big scene with a fight or something. They bring in a few stuntmen. In this case, I was one of the skeletons in one of the scenes. And so I came in, I worked a couple days, was a skeleton in the fights. One of the scenes.
So it was just a couple days?
Yeah, it wasn't a big deal for me.
Okay. So The Exorcist 3, was that another just kind of...
Yeah, I did The Priest, Exorcist 3, and they were getting thrown around in this room, and to do that, they put a big set room on a gimbal so it turns. And as they turn the set, you fall from here to here and back to here, and of course the camera's anchored onto the set on the inside, on the floor, so all it sees is this thing moving. It sees your body flying back and forth, and it looks like you're being thrown. And that's the way they do those shows. In fact, George Wilbur was with me on that. He was dubbing for George. Yeah, and he was doing him, and then I got in there. And I remember one time George got in there, and he got turned upside down, hit his head. And George had been a boxer. He'd boxed a lot. And he got in, and they said, cut. He says, Tom, come here. I walked in the set and he said, I'm knocked out, help me out of here. He knew he got his bell rang and he couldn't walk for a while. So I helped him get out of there. But yeah, that's not an easy thing to get thrown against the walls.
Did you ever have any serious injuries while working?
Well, no, I was pretty fortunate and I was pretty careful. So I really had no serious injuries that took me out of work. Everybody works injured. I mean, it's like being in professional sports. You do a lot of work when you still have an injury of some sort, but nothing to take you completely out of it. I never had to turn down work because I was hurt.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to Shawshank Redemption, you were the stunt double for Tim Robbins.
Yes.
What stunts and things were you involved with?
Well, that's a different story because as good as Shawshank Redemption was, everybody see it, or how many saw it? How many liked it? Yeah, most people like it. And it was a good movie, but it was a disappointment for me because if you saw the scene when they had a fight where this one guy, the guards went up into his cell, he was on the third tier, and they beat him with these sticks because he was harassing a couple of guys, whatever it was. But the script had written out a whole different scenario. What they were supposed to do, they were going to take this guy, hit him, pull him out to the third tier, and throw him up off the deck, and he fell all the way down. And then, and as he's falling, he'll hit a sort of a universal a cart that has brooms and utility stuff in it, and he hits that and breaks it all and hits the ground, and then he's in a wheelchair. So this is what I was going to do. I had it all worked out. I done the set up the fall. I got the airbag for the fall. We showed the director the day before I came off the second level, so you could see what it's going to look like when I fall. And we're all set to do it, and it was really going to be fun. We had a couple stunt guys who could pick me up and throw me out, and then I'd fall and do this really cool thing. And of course, I walked on the set, and that day the coordinator's over the corner. He's going, "Hey, what's going on?" He says, "They don't have time to shoot the stunt. They're just going to do something else." I thought, "Oh no!" So you didn't get to see that. I was looking forward to do it, but I did do some stuff for Tim, and I remember when he broke through the drain pipe and he came shooting out the drain pipe, and then he was escaping. I did some of that stuff for him, of course. And then it's funny because I also played a prison guard or a police guy, whatever I was, looking for him. And so we're walking down the water in the creek, and I find his shirt and I hold it up, and then they take a still and then they put it on the front page of a newspaper, and they do that old-fashioned spin, and there I am holding the shirt that I wore when I escaped.
So you were also involved in the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean. Four?
Yeah, I did 4 of those.
I imagine that being like an army of a production. What is it like being on such a big production like that?
Well, it's great. First thing, when I was young and I'm growing up, I saw the Three Musketeers and the Crimson Pirate and all this sword fighting, and I just thought it was the greatest thing. I said, "Ooh, I'd love to do that." And you'd see, I had pictures of me as a kid, you know, with a wooden sword and a cape and playing D'Artagnan. And then years go by, and I do take some fencing, and I do a couple things in a movie here and there, and then all of a sudden up comes this Pirates of the Caribbean, and I get on the show. Oh God, I did 4 of the films, and it was the greatest experience to go out there and be a pirate and do sword fighting and falls and landing in the water and all kinds of stuff. So it was really a fun show for me.
And that was on location, right?
Oh yeah, we went everywhere. We went down the Caribbean. We were on the few of the St. Vincent and several other islands. It was really cool.
So you were basically a pirate, and you did a lot.
Yeah, I was on Barbossa's crew, and then I was. They did some motion capture too. That's where they take you and they put you in a motion capture suit, which is like a jumpsuit with almost like ping pong balls at your elbows and your shoulders, and then they'll shoot that. And with a computer, they can make it a framework that they can put any face, any body on. So whatever you do, they'll attach the creature to it. And we were all these different kinds of sea creatures. If you're a hammerhead shark or whatever it was, they had all these different characters. But the stunt guys would do the action and then just put the face on them, the character they wanted.
And the stunt guys sort of form a brotherhood.
Oh, sure. We have groups that are, like I'm a member of the Stuntmen's Association, which is probably the oldest stunt group, and it's a brotherhood, and you have to have experience to get into it. There's Stunts Unlimited, there's an International Stuntmen's Association, there's these few groups that are established and do have memberships, and it is a pretty strict thing and a good brotherhood, and everybody's, it's almost like a military platoon or something. Everybody looks out for each other, and when you're on the set, they're backing you up, and you're helping other guys, and you're making sure they're safe.
It triggered me because you said something that I thought was interesting, that you would almost rather recommend someone else that's better for the project than doing it yourself. And I just thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, guys that are really good, they also know that there's a specialty. There's some guys that have done a lot of work in fire, that have developed suits and things that you would say, well, I can do that, but someone's over here has a whole rigging thing up, and you might ask him first, So that happens, and sometimes they'll call you, hey, Charlie said you should try this. I want to use you for this high fall or something,
Right. So I've interviewed other stunt performers from Kane Hodder, people like that. One that was really interesting to me was Jim Winburn.
Oh, Jimmy, yeah.
He was very interesting. He had a lot of stories about, some of the old time films. But one thing that was interesting when we were talking, he never watched any of his films. He just considered it a job, and he moved on to the next.
Well, I didn't know that. I know I worked with Jim. I mean, who saw Baba Black Sheep, the series with you remember seeing that? Well, he and I worked on that back there. We did some of the characters. And we did other shows too. In fact, how many have gone to Universal Studios tour in California and seen the stunt show and all the stuff they have up there? Anybody been there before where they have a stunt show? And Jim Winburn had done that for several years, and he was really, really good. He was a great stage guy. And then I took over, after he had left, I got the job too, so I worked there, so we both had that in common where we did live shows. Okay. And I didn't know he didn't look at his movies, but usually when you finish a production, you have a closing party. Everybody gets to go to the wrap party, and after the wrap party, they'll have a premiere, and everybody goes to the premiere and sees their movie. So I have a hunch that Jim saw more of his movies than he may have put on, because you usually go to the premiere of a film you worked on with everybody for 3 months.
Right, that's what I thought, and I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But
when you're busy, sometimes you miss that stuff.
Right, and he was always working.
Yeah, he always worked. He did all kinds of stuff. He did a lot of live show work and set up shows all around the country.
If you all remember the original Halloween, sorry, this is a Jim Winburn story.
Yeah.
When Michael gets shot off and he falls down, that was Jim. And he had to come up with something to make it look, they didn't want to use a bag because they didn't have any money, basically. So what he did was he got a tube or a piece of plywood, and he put Solo cups underneath the plywood, and then put leaves all over that, and that's what he fell on.
Is that what he told you? I didn't hear that. Yeah. Well, that's not uncommon. If you're going to jump from a height, say you're going to jump from 12, 14 feet or something like that, and you want to land on the ground, if you put these cups underneath a 4x8 sheet of plywood, it'll help break your fall. So that's not uncommon. Yeah. But I thought he landed, didn't he go out over the balcony and land on his back though?
Yeah, and that's where he said that he put the Solo cup.
Is that where he said? Okay, he probably had some kind of pad on top of that, because you're not going to hit exactly on a piece of plywood.
Right, I think he said he had some
sort of
padding there.
And
then the leaves went over the pad.
Well, and we've used, cardboard boxes were probably more common before the airbag. Oh, okay. So we've done a lot of falls into cardboard boxes, and you take a bunch of cardboard boxes and build them up, and then you rope them down so they hold together. And then you take some open boxes and put them on top so you have at least a smooth top to land on, so you just don't go through one box. And I've done lots of falls that way, and there's different things you can do to set those up. And I set up one where we just had small boxes. It had to come out of a tree, but we put another smaller box inside that, so it gave you more cushion, and you could make a smaller catcher and then put grass and stuff over that. So I mean, there's lots of ways to set up a fall. Right. And what he said is just the way he did it for that show. And then I think Dick Warlock had to repeat that for his part, because he had to tie into the fall off balcony.
Yeah, and another little fun fact, Michael Myers was played by anybody that could fit the mask.
Oh yeah.
In the original. So
yeah.
There's a lot of
there was a day before, in the 30s, 40s, they had a few stunt guys that were really well known, and they bring actors in, and the casting would say, well, stand right there at the door. He says, okay, back up to the door, and they had to mark the height of the stuntman. All right, you're too tall, get another one. So sometimes stuntmen really help get the show cast.
Is there any one stunt that you look back in your career and say, wow, I can't believe I did that?
Well, not necessarily I can't believe I did it, because I did it. I did some really fun things I thought worked out pretty good. Robert Conrad was in a movie called The Assassin. It was a movie of the week, and it was really cool because I had to jump out of a 4th floor window, and I was supposed to be a robot, a mechanical guy, and they were trying to find him because he went off, he kind of went off the program and was out doing bad things, so they're chasing him, and they knew they could shoot him in the chest because he didn't have any armor. Well, this robot had figured that out and put some armor on his chest. So they found him in this room, and he was actually plugged into the electrical socket because he was recharging himself, and they come in and start shooting him, and the bullets start ricocheting everywhere, and it wasn't killing him, and he unplugs, and he turns around and smiles at him, and then jumps out the window. So he jumps out the window, and he's doing a swan dive, and does a front flip and lands on top of a car. And when he hits the car, the top of the car crushes and the windows blow out. He runs off the top of the car down to the ground, and one of the other cops tries to cut him off with a car. He slides into him, and he jumps completely over that car and runs away. So I got to do all those pieces that made it look good. And that was kind of a neat thing that you say, I guess I did that.
So last question for me before we take a few from the audience. What are your thoughts on stunt awards at the Oscars?
Well, I've never been really in favor of stunt awards because it's important. There's two different schools of thought. First off, how many people have seen trailers of movies and realize that what they really sell a movie is on action? Most of the time, you're going to see the stunt action in a film because that's part of the stuff that really makes the film good. And it's important that some stunt people are given credit for it, and it would be nice if we did, but the thing I'm not really in favor of is the idea that we set up a competition, and now you're on a production, they say, well, we got a high fall here, we're gonna go off the fourth story. The guy says, hey, listen, let me just jump off the top of the building, and maybe we'll get an Academy Award for it, So that kind of thing can happen, and in that sense, I'm not real thrilled with the idea that you're going to give a stuntman an award. It should be, and what they're doing, I think, now is that it's for the department. And the guy who's the stunt coordinator, the head of the department, he'll get an Oscar for the stunt action that was in the movie. And that might be better than having the individual stuntman try to be in competition for an Oscar.
Yeah, it's kind of a dangerous business.
It doesn't, you're supposed to be making a movie, and the action should match what the movie's about and the story, and you're trying to make the actor look good.
Right.
It's not like, oh, cool, I might get an Oscar if I do it this way.
Very true. All right, who has a question?
Boy, we're full of questions.
Oh, sure.
I apologize if you already said, but is there any stuntmen before you that you found as influences to your work?
Oh, sure, there's been mentors for me. There's been a lot of stunt guys that have come before me that have done things that you look up to. And when I first started, I started actually in the 1970s. In 1973 is when I first started training. And at that time, there was a lot of guys that had been in westerns and in movies from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and I'd seen their things. And of course, you're thinking ahead. Maybe I could do some of the things like they did. Well, of course, technology moves ahead, we have more equipment, we do more rigging, and so things change, and the computer comes in and it, adds to things.
So for like the actual production process of setting up a stunt, what do you find is the hardest part? Is it the safety aspect, the choreography? What part of the stunt is the most difficult?
Well, it would depend on what it is. If it's a very tricky stunt, then of course the safety part and how you're going to get it done, it would be the hardest part. And then other things, sometimes just finding the right guy for the thing you're going to do. And then you got to satisfy the director. What you're trying to do, the director he has a vision of what he wants. You're trying to give it to him, but you have to do it safely. So you got to be sure that you're going to give him what he can have, and let him know in the production that it wouldn't be really safe this way, but if we use this and did that, and maybe did a cut here, and that's probably difficult sometimes to get it across to the company that to make it safer.
Yeah, is there a movie out there that nobody's talking about that has great stunts and it's just people have overlooked it?
Oh, there's so much product nowadays. I haven't seen half the stuff that's out there, but you're for sure there's plenty of things out there that have some great action in it. When you see, I've never heard of that, but look at this stuff. It's going on right now. Yeah. I can't give you a name of any one particular one, but.
Is there anything from the past that you can say you think people don't give enough credit?
Well, Bullet was a great movie, but it was a great car chase, and it was like new at its time, but it got a lot of credit. But you're looking at that, you're saying, hey, that was really cool. And most of those things, people realize what it was. Again, I'm sure there's some film that maybe not been the greatest film, but they had some great action that didn't get credit or people didn't see. But you know, there is a lot of action going on.
I got one last question before we wrap this up. What are your thoughts, and what are other guys' thoughts on like Tom Cruise and these big stars doing their own stunts?
Well, a guy like Tom Cruise who likes to do action, when you're setting up for somebody like Cruise, you know, he wants to do it. So if he's going to do a fall or a cable drop or something like you've seen him do, you can be sure that the stunt department has gone out there, rigged it up, and done it several times with the stunt guy who's his double. And they make sure it's safe, and then they bring Tom out and say, here's the way it's going to be done. See how Charlie's doing it for you? Yeah, okay, so we're going to hook you up, give you a test. Okay, all right, well, you know, you work them into it. And if they want to do it and the production company's okay with it and he can do it and you think you've got it safe, it's okay. I just don't like to see an actor say, I'm doing all my own stuff, and you're not prepared for it. In a lower budget movie, you can get into trouble. And the one thing producers don't want to do is to halt production. So you can't take a chance with your actors because he wants to do the stunts to say, okay, go ahead, you can do it. And then you get dinged up, and then you have to stop and wait for him to get well again. So, you know.
There's a lot of money behind it.
Yeah, you know, there's a whole lot of consideration besides just egos.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Get an autograph and a photo.
And just one thing I'd like to say, though, is that I'm here because I did these movies, and everybody thinks it's wonderful, and they call me Mr. Morga. But the only reason I'm here is because you like the movies, and you're the fans. So I got to thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Otherworldlyculture.com. Subscribe, like, and comment on our posts all over social media and our site, otherworldlyculture.com.